Right. So if there are questions for Aga and Annie from the audience, this is the time to take them. Questions, comments, whatever reaction you have to this wonderful conversation. This from keynote speakers. So please raise your virtual hand and then let's take your questions and comments.
So we may have no virtual hands, but that's okay. We enjoyed talking with you.
Okay.
And oh,
sorry to cut in.
yep.
So I have two questions, one for Chrissy and one for the keynote speakers. So I will start with the one for Chrissy. Chrissy, I'm very curious to know your take on this. You talked about education-based enhancement, and within the literature on human enhancement, some scholars like Person and Salavisco have argued that education-based enhancement is not good enough to prevent the calamity that will befall humanity with the rapid growth in science and technology. For them, we might wake up one day and an individual might decide to use this development in science and technology to wipe out humanity. Now, and they further argued that this shows the possibility and the need for moral enhancement. So I want to really know your take on this. Then my question for the keynote speakers is this. You talked about imagination, and I was thinking, imagination goes in two ways. Sometimes we imagine good things, and sometimes we imagine bad things. So when you talked about imagination, that we should imagine the future, should we start to demarcate between imagining the good from imagining the bad? That is, I just want a clarification on that point. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll first of all start. Thank you, Amara. I mean, the 15 minutes is not really enough to, break down this whole thing. So I will begin with, currently there is a concept of education that we have that is not functional because it focuses on functionality. And because it focuses on functionality, it can't apply in this context because it creates a kind of a competition. It creates a kind of perfectionism where the human person needs to be perfect in thinking, perfect in skills, perfect in the use of these things without a corresponding human what I would call humanity inside it. Like a woman who wrote about the high tech. High tech, the book he wrote on high tech is quite a long, it's a long time it's published. And his question is, this humanity and technology. So first of all, I will have to tell you that the concept of education, the present concept of education that we have globally is only for marketability. So it doesn't prepare us as humans to be able to be fully human and be morally or ethically responsible. That is one. And if I extend it further, you will see that even currently, we don't have to wait till an individual uses this instrument to wipe the world. It is already happening with high rate of terrorism going about, even the production of weapons. So the weapon industry is not yet IT. It is not yet IT, but it is already used to wipe and commit genocide. So human beings have the risk of becoming the worst of what they can become. All right. And that is why we need a new concept of education that we can inject into the system that will not prepare us not only to know how to do or use these things, but to become fully human. fully humanity, the full humanity means compassion, to be able to discern, to be compassionate, and to be vulnerable. If I know that I'm vulnerable and I know that the other person is vulnerable, we will have a co-agency like somebody talked about today. And that co-agency will prepare us to be co-responsible and responsive. Now you distinguish between moral enhancement and pedagogy, educationally based enhancement. I'm not sure where that moral enhancement will come. Do you mean in this sense that we put something in the brains of human beings to make them morally, to enhance them to think morally? Now, if that should be the case, that we put some technological, additions to the human mind in order to control this human person to become morally responsible. At some point, there are going to be a breakaway. As you can see, computers rust. They need updates. So artificial intelligence also need updates. That means that enhancement will at some point also need an update. All right. So that is the first instance. The second instance is that human being, that person is no longer autonomous. So the moral, we can't judge this person, that this person is moral, because it is an addition. Something is behind pushing this individual person to become moral rather than this person choosing to be moral. All right. But if moral enhancement is part of educational enhancement, which is what I am promoting, that means we need a concept of education. And in this sense, the whole idea embedded in Elemu and Ozozo. In our place, we say Ezomwa, to train a child. To train a child is not only cognitive. It is also to make this child to take responsibility, to be socially conscious, to have social competence, to be able to have morals and virtues and ethics, to be able to discern, to be able to grow, to know this is right or wrong. I mean, it's happening these days, of course. Families train their children to discern right or wrong, but it is not part of our educational system. It has been left to the society and it has been left to the families. It must be inculcated in the curriculum, where the children must have to learn discernment, as part of their educational system. So I will advocate that moral enhancement becomes part of the educational-based enhancement instead of becoming part of biological enhancement of a human person. And then risk. There are, in all these things that we are saying, we can never run away from risk. Some risks are predictable, some risks are not predictable. And technology has come to stay. Many are benefiting from it. Many are losing from it. But we can never run away from it, because there is a power that is behind it. And as long as this power stays behind it, that enhancement has come to stay. The only thing is that people need to adjust to resistance. People need to also develop a power that can match the power that is behind human enhancement and biotechnology. How do you equip people rather than to equip their mind to be able to discern, equip their hearts to be able to know and stand correctly for it? And I mean, without education, we cannot achieve this. And that is not the concept of education that we are having now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Christiana. That very exhaustive response. Professor Aga and Leilani, if you're still there, there was a question for you both.
Yes. So yes, I mean, it's thank you. I think it was Amara who asked the question, or
yes, Amara.
Yes. And it's a great question, and I'm going to give a frustrating. I don't know what Lali thinks, but I think we have to imagine the worst and the best, and hold them in our heads together. Because I mean, I think that if we put all of our diverse heads together, humanity's 8 billion imaginations has amazing imaginative reach. And people talk about, oh, AI, it's advancing so quickly. It's like, oh, wow, soon it will be writing all the philosophy books. Well, it doesn't have an imagination, but we do. But we underuse the resource. So when talking to Lani, her Pacific imagination functions differently from mine, but I can, if I try, I can follow her and I can work out where she's going. And the things, I mean, as I hear, Lord, you introduced a distinguished speaker by just describing her as a bird who flew away and came back, and it was like it was a different way to think. I never thought. I mean, 'cause I was prepared for the speaker to be introduced like with all the achievements on a Wikipedia page, and I think that that's the insights that we need when we, if Elon Musk turns up and says, "Here's a cool chip. I'll put it in your head and you will be able to make a fortune on the futures market or selling cryptocurrency." We need to think about whether those capacities, how they will be harmed. And that's sort of in a way one that says, if you were to bring in Pacifica people in the ground level and say what enhancement techs would work for you, I think you'll get a different answer than if you just ask people who look like me.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally. I totally agree. Very little that I know about it, but I totally agree in terms of the imagination can go either way. The good, you can imagine the good, you can imagine the bad. But I think without that, how do we remain human? I mean, that's all I have to add to that. I don't think we can totally rule out one or the other, but that's what makes us human.
Yeah, so that's the thing that inspired me about reading the African transhumanist volume was all of these thoughts that I couldn't think that are there. And they're part of the human imaginative heritage that we've got these amazing thinkers who will express these ideas. And if we hear them, we can learn from them. But if we don't hear them, well, we can never learn. And then it's important an enhancement, isn't it? Because it's like once we don't travel down that path, we could lose it forever. That was a possibility we didn't explore. Gone.
Okay. I have a question for you both. And first, your topic, Sea of Islands, is part of the inspiration for this question. And then a recent chat I had with a friend just some days ago. And it has to do with the ship of Theseus. The ship of Theseus, yeah, from Greek mythology. It's a philosophical thought experiment that refers to this questions whether an object remains the same if all its original components are gradually replaced over time. So the ship of Theseus was such a ship that had all its planks replaced. And then over time, the question arises, is it still the same ship or a new one? And if we apply that to this concept of human enhancement, having our body parts and our mental capacities replaced over time, at what point do we get to that we could say this is a new kind of human or is still the same kind of human, right? So at what point or what's the implication of human enhancement on humanity? Do the replacements eventually lead to a new being or it's still the same being, right? So how do you how do you apply the ship of Theseus paradox to these questions of human enhancement and humanity? And are there also parallels within Samoan culture that also addresses this paradox?
Yes.
You go
okay.
first.
Well, yeah, so I think that's one of the deep questions about the integrations of technologies into our brains and bodies that do incrementally change us. Because I guess intuitively, we could end up changing a lot. And it's almost like we may change so much that if we do it incrementally, then we'll end up changing so radically and not even knowing that we've done it. So you make a tiny change and then another tiny change and then another tiny change. And it's like yes, suddenly, I mean, just to basically put the ship of Theseus in practical concept, right now, what Lani said about the Sea of Islands and the thinking behind it, I can kind of get it. And I hope you African thinkers can get it too. I'm sure you can because you're human. But in a way, if the ship of Theseus keeps on going, and we all, I mean, we all make different incremental, we end up in a different destination. Is there going to be a terrifying future where we've all enhanced in different ways, and I can no longer understand the Sea of Islands? It's just meaningless words to me.
And I think even without technology, I mean, we're very different humans from the human beings our ancestors were. I mean, today I could never navigate the vast Pacific Ocean by looking at the stars and the moon and the waves uh, uh, and the wind. So we do evolve sort of in that way, even without technology. Our paths do change all the time. I think our basic humanity remains, although we may take a different, I mean, have different knowledge, different thoughts. And as knowledge is passed down through the generations, it changes somewhat. But, we still, there is a basic humanity that remains, I think. But we change, and even without technology, we change. Yeah, that's what I think of that. Hope that makes sense.
Well,
Yeah,
what
it
if there
does.
was a range of enhancement texts that would actually, rather than making us more different and fracturing the unity of humanity, would enhance mutual ability to understand each other and sort of in a way so that, if I could think in the dynamical way that you think, and it
That
would be
would mean,
natural to me.
and that would mean that would mean we wouldn't have racism anymore if we
Well,
all could understand each other.
yes, yes. So the
Perspective.
barriers that come up, I mean, it's sort of in a way, hatred and racism fills those gaps.
Mm.
And it's like it's very hard to prevent it from just creeping in. And suddenly you start fearing immigrants and you start fearing people because they may look a bit different and think a bit different.
Mm.
We're running out of time, but if there are any other questions from the house, still, I think we can still spare one more before we let you go. But in the absence of any such question, I would just like to add that the perennial Asian and perennial questions of change and identity are still topics that human enhancement and transhumanism uh, all of a sudden are confronted with. So, but then the more we could get cross-cultural responses to that paradox of change and identity, I think it will make the conversation even more interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
My
thank
hand
you.
is up, Abdul.
Oh,
Please,
yeah.
I have a question.
Go
Should
ahead.
I go ahead?
Please do. Please do.
Okay, it's still to the keynote speakers. I'm happy that you talked about interconnectedness with nature. And I think the previous speakers also touched on that when they discussed Ubuntu and the Afro-communitarianism in relation to human enhancements. So my question is this: do you think that human enhancements would negatively impact this interconnectedness? Thank you.
Of nature.
Yes. What do you think?
I don't know much about human enhancement, but it would depend on the type of human enhancement. Well, whose perspective would be embodied in that technology? If the perspective from Oceania, I guess, is incorporated in that technology, that interconnectedness with nature, with the land, with the heavens, with the ocean, would be there. Yeah, it really would depend.
I agree 100%, of course, but but I think In a way, that question is almost much more important than the answer, because it's the capacity to ask that question that suggests that that's a value, and that in a way, oh, if I say, well, Elon Musk sold me this chip, and if you're not asking, oh, how might that affect my connected with nature? Oh, no. If you'll get rich if you have that chip because you'll be able to make lots of money, but you will view nature as just a resource, and you'll be unable to think that's part of the price you pay to get rich. And I think that would be a tragic loss. So trade-offs,
Okay.
but
What is
making
the
the right
cost?
trade-offs.
What is the cost?
Then you do your risk benefit analysis, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. All right. So thank you both for joining us on for this.
Excuse me, I really want to say something, if you allow me.
Please, but just a minute.
So I'll make it as short as possible. So because this whole interconnectedness, and of course the whole idea of how the enhancement will create equality globally, which I am really pessimistic about. The complete wiping away of difference is unrealistic. Like I said, and then we also think of what I would call democratization of enhancement, okay? That is in terms of its just distribution. Who will need enhancement? Who will need to be enhanced? And who will not? Will individuals have choices? Will societies have choices? Okay, so, and you think of when we democratize it and say everybody should have access, what will be the criteria of this having access? Who decides this democratization? The power asymmetry, global power asymmetry, in terms of the production of the resources for enhancement and distribution of enhancement is already, the gap is too much, right? And when we think of what actually makes us humans, my argument has always been our vulnerability makes us humans, not our perfection. I mean, the African ethical framework talks about, and when we talk about interdependence, interconnectedness, it means that something is lacking in the other that makes the other person the complete part of that person. And that means at the center is that vulnerability that not a kind of vulnerability that made me not to be autonomous, but an vulnerability that makes me to be connected in this sense. That means cut off. I cannot be alone. So that being will now become to be with. All right. But this being with is already a being in order to be with. And this being is located in time and space. This being is located in historical context. This being has a past. This being has a future. This being has a present. And somebody who has the resources of AI, bioenhancement, is somewhere deciding which of these beings will participate in the enhancement and which type of enhancement should be for a particular sort of being. So it's a really, for me, a question of the possibility of having a just world in the awakening of human enhancement and biotechnology. So I still come back to my arguments. Within African context, within Oceanic context, within Asiatic context, there must be an education that is context-based education, that is also universalable, that is applicable overboard, that prepares people within their context to understand their own perspective, to understand their readiness, to understand their place in the being in the world, in order to participate or to say, I don't want to participate, and be able to resist it, or to what extent I have to participate.
All right,
Yes.
thank you. Any reactions to what
I have, Abdul, I've had my hand up for a bit. I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it as
yeah.
Is it okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Very briefly, and also building on what Christy is saying, I'm also a little bit pessimistic. I hold this tension between what we mean when we say that AI could help us dissolve the differences. I actually think that the differences make us who we are, and that we need to see them. They need to become clear to us, that those differences are actually what make us human, right? And if a technology creates new hierarchies of the enhanced and the left behind, then we have betrayed that spirit of humanity, that what we call Ubuntu. So the future of AI, I think, must, not just in Africa, but globally, must be measured by not the speed at which we enhance and reduce our differences, but actually whether it draws us closer. And I draw the difference between, I still go back to the idea that the AI technologies as we have them today, and AI is not new to humanity, but the new technologies that we have now are really based on what I forget the author of the book, Weird Communities or Weird Cultures, where he uses a weird acronym to mean Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic societies. And I make the distinction between that and the rest of the world, which is all of us actually, that we have communities that are based on relationality, the spirit of relationality, embodied practices and knowledge, adaptive to change on land, right? And practice that intelligence of the heart, as Chrissy was saying, which is basically love, right? So how can we build technologies that in itself does not remove the difference? It actually enhances our capacity to accept that difference is inherently part of human nature. And it's those differences that create the possibilities for seeing each other, for relating with each other. And if we take away those, as we've had, the Elon Musks of this world claiming that empathy is a fault in our system, which is actually a really dangerous conversation to have, right? So I think that the differences need to become even more clear. And I'm of the opinion that we need to create small language models across the world that actually interact, that share, that relate to each other, that show clearly what the relational knowledge we have looks like across the board, because different communities make sense of the world differently based on where they are.
Yes, so do you,
Oh, yeah. Totally agree with you.
so I think the word I liked was vulnerability. And that's what makes us dependent on each other. And it's like when you just talk the enhancement lens, we almost need to enhance vulnerability because vulnerability enhances our need for each other. Because we have this idea that the titans of tech are not vulnerable at all. They need no one. They just need our resources. But we need each other because we're disasters without you. We're all disasters without each other because we can enhance in different ways. So Leilani and I focused on what would an enhancement look from a Pacifica lens. But I hope that we could also be open to having a discussion about how we're all vulnerable and we'll all be vulnerable in different ways. And that's the full human story. It's almost like, I don't know, it sounds weird to say, let's enhance our vulnerability. But I think that's true because when we enhance our vulnerability, we enhance our need for each other. It's like we're all doomed. If we lose the Pacific, well, we're all screwed. We need the Pacific. I mean, we need the Pacific, and not just the physical islands, the people.
And I think I pick up on you're so right. It's that difference that's really important. And, for all the different perspectives. And I just have this one of Oceania, but it's different from every other perspective. And what do we lose what does this human enhancement look like? What do we lose as peoples who have a different view and different perspectives from the Western European powerful nation perspective? So I love this idea of difference because I think that's where all my questions come from. What is it going to cost us in terms of our humanity, in terms of our difference? Because, you know, in the scheme of things, and I loved what Christy said before, in the scheme of things, if they were to distribute the enhancement, well, the Sea of Islands, where I'm from, would be the last people to get it, because we wouldn't be able to afford it. We have no resources in our islands, so would be left out of it anyway. So it might not even be a concern. We might be left with our perspectives all by ourselves because we won't be able to afford it. So yeah, lots of questions, but yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you all for your contributions. And I think the point that you have all made synchronizes with earlier position that I defended on solidarity, a decolonial conception of solidarity, where one of the virtues that we really need to develop individually and as a community is accommodation. So accommodation has to do with, recognizing these differences is not something to overcome. It's something to appreciate more, tolerate, and we all live a flourishing life that way. So I could see that the conversation, the presentation in each of the presentation made so far, one links to the other and they connect. So, but one last question that I have, it may not be answered, but I think it's something I'm really interested in. I'm interested in having maybe resources where Oceanian philosophies intersect with African philosophies, and how both can really inform some new ideas on ethics of human enhancement. So the linkage, because I know that from the presentation made by Ofan Wakinyi, she talked about land. I know it's a key thing in Pacific, the Oceanian ethics. They talked about land. So much regard to land, right? So I'm just wondering if you have any resources where, like literature, where the intersection between African perspectives and Pacific Islanders perspectives have been really explored. I think it's something interesting. If it has not been done, this platform might be an avenue to really connect, to see how we can come up with stuff like that applied to the context of ethics of human enhancement.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know of that literature, but it needs to exist.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been done. That's why I was very excited to share the Sea of Islands with the continent, and hopefully this is building relationships and connections now, and we can start to look at these things. I've got a disclaimer, I'm not a philosopher. If there's any literature out there, I'll find it, but I'm just gonna inject myself in any way I can with any connections over in the continent. So yeah, thank you for giving me this space to share my little knowledge with all you wonderful, esteemed people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you very much to our keynote speakers for your thought-provoking lecture. Thank you to all the participants. Today has been really engaging. So I will thank you also to the Conversational School of Philosophy and to the local organizing committee for putting up this conference. So we will see tomorrow by 10 a.m. South African time. You please use the same Zoom login details to log in for tomorrow's conference. See you tomorrow and have a nice morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
We loved
you.
it.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Nice